Here.
Jalali.
Here.
Nicker.
Here.
Prince.
Here.
Tolbert.
Here.
6 present, 1 absent. Commissioner Yang is excused. Item number 1, Min 23-22, approving the minutes of the April 2023 HRA meeting.
A motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Jalali. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
6 in favor, none opposed. The minutes are approved. Item number 2, Resolution 23-695, authorizing additional expenditures for the redevelopment of 800 Robert Street South, District 3, Ward 2.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. This item will authorize expenditures of up to $185,961 plus land value to assist with the redevelopment of 800 Robert Street South. This is an increase in $45,500 from the prior approval. 800 Robert Street South, as you might recall, was an HRA-owned vacant residential lot purchased through the Ramsey County Tax Forfeit Program back in 2011 with CDBG funds. HRA staff, in consultation with the West Side Community Organization, determined that the highest public purpose redevelopment land use for that parcel was single-family residential. As you know, the use of CDBG funds requires that construction be carried out by a community-based development organization, or CBDO. NEDA is the only CBDO in the area of the project. NEDA presented a proposal to the HRA to purchase the parcel, build and sell a new single-family home to a household with an income at or below 80% of area median income, consistent with CDBG requirements. NEDA initially proposed to purchase the parcel for its estimated market value of $13,300. As determined by the Ramsey County assessor, and requested that the HRA provide seller financing for the land purchase in the form of a forgivable loan. They also requested a development gap subsidy at the time of $112,000, also in the form of a forgivable loan. In August of 2020, the HRA approved sale of the parcel along with the note. Due to the pandemic and COVID-19 pandemic, NEDA was unable to commence construction in the fall of 2020 as originally intended. Rebidding the work in 2021 resulted in significant cost increases due to labor and material shortages, as with many projects. In August of 2021, the HRA authorized additional expenditures for a total of up to $140,461 plus the land value to fill the gap and allow construction to commence. NEDA had been awarded a $42,000 $500 grant from MHFA's Community Housing Impact Fund to subsidize the project. Just due to the time how it's extended out, they are no longer able to get that subsidy. In addition, they've seen an additional rise in construction costs. So the project is nearing completion. It's about 6 weeks away, but this action does provide an additional $45,500 for the project. This will be structured as a deferred loan secured with a note, and upon completion of construction and sale to an eligible buyer, the loan will be forgiven. Representatives from NEDA are here, as well as project manager Marian Abdi, and staff recommends approval of the item.
Comments or questions?
I have so many questions. I'm not going to start.
All right. Commissioner, a motion to approve from Commissioner Naker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 3, Resolution 23-696, authorizing a loan of up to $100,000 from the HRA Business Assistance Fund and waiving certain Business Assistance Fund provisions to the Minnesota Museum of American Art, 350 Robert Street South, Suite 101, District 17, Ward 2.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. Again, this item will approve a $100,000 loan to the Minnesota Museum of Art to assist with the rehabilitation and build-out of the space at 350 Robert Street South, and waiving the eligibility provision that for-profit businesses are eligible for those funds. The Minnesota Museum of Art is a nonprofit entity, one of Minnesota's oldest arts organizations, and holds a collection of more than 5,000 pieces of art. Let's see. In 2015, the City of St. Paul's HRA approved a $900,000 TIF loan to partially fund the build-out of nearly 30,000 square feet of permanent space in the Pioneer Endicott building. Phase 1 of the project was completed in 2018, and construction is underway for Phase 2, which will include triple the gallery space, a permanent home for the 5,000-piece permanent art collection. And Phase 2 is a $14 million project, of which $10.5 million is from state bonding. The M will open its doors in fall of 2023 with new indoor exhibitions and programming. Once complete, the M estimates the museum will attract nearly 60,000 visitors annually, which creates increased foot traffic for nearby businesses and adds to the vitality of the downtown core. The $100,000 is what was the remaining gap in order to be able to get the bonding money from the state, and so we were leveraging lots of other public funding as well as private funding. The HRA loan will be 7 years, 0% loan with payments deferred for 1 year, and staff recommends approval of the item.
And on this, I'm going to make a motion to lay it over to the next HRA agenda. I have continued questions for the M. I was able to talk to them briefly this afternoon, but I have some questions about being open to the public, especially considering the resources that the city has given over the past 9 years. So I think we'll ask to lay this over. I do have one question about the HRA Business Assistance Fund, though, Director Goodman. How much is that fund?
How much is remaining, Chair Tolbert?
How much did we allocate for this year for it? Or remaining, or both?
Chair Tolbert, I believe we allocated $600,000 this year. I'm actually not certain what the remaining balance is at this time,
Okay.
but I can.
But that's the more is 600,000, so this is about a sixth of our business assistance fund?
Chair Tolbert, I'll have to confirm
Sure.
those dollar amounts, but that's possible.
Okay. And have we given other exceptions? I don't recall to nonprofit.
Exceptions? Chair Tolbert, the rules the guidelines that we adopted, that was guidelines we just adopted about a year ago. So I don't know if we've waived any of the guidelines. They are guidelines that were approved by this body. The requirement that it be for profit is something, though, that I know we've talked about changing. It's turned out that we've had either requests or considerations for funding for nonprofits previously, and that's definitely a guideline that we've talked about. This body's talked about. Sort of, maybe that wasn't appropriate for the fund at the time. So, it is currently one of the guidelines, though.
Okay. Commissioner Aker?
Thanks, Chair Tolbert. First, just a point of privilege from the chair. I had a momentary brain lapse on the last item and didn't acknowledge Karen Reed from NEDA and her staff for being here, and thanking them so much for taking the time to come out and also for their persistence on that very important and longstanding project. So thank you. And on this item, I support the motion for the layover. I think it's really important that the M engage all of us and make sure we know what their plan is for reopening and let us know about the work that they're doing. It has been a significant amount of public investment. I do plan to support the item when it comes back to us. I think the M is doing tremendous work. And if you haven't seen it yet, one of their most recent projects was actually a partnership with the St. Paul Conservatory of Performing Arts. They worked with students in one of their classes on a public art project to create a mural that is now hanging in the Victory parking ramp. The very long, very white hallway is now a beautiful mural that students created and installed just last week in partnership with the M. So they're doing really important and creative work for downtown vibrancy, but I also think that they need to be sharing that information with all of us.
Great. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? So I suspect, and I suggested the M to reach out to folks, but just figuring out when they're going to open from the pandemic, I think, is important. So, Commissioner Brown.
I support the layover. I appreciate that opportunity to get more information and have clarity. I do also want to underscore the conversation about waiving these are the rules that we just simply put in place. I'm noticing that item number 6 is waiving our sustainability building ordinance, and the next item is waiving the HRA maximum developer fees. Like, we're doing a lot of waiving, not this kind, and I want to just make sure that we establish policies for a reason to support goals and values of the city and the city council, and if we're just waiving them, I think we need to question the policy that we have in place. Maybe it needs to be changed and improved, or maybe we need to stick to the plan. So I do support this, and I think this is more a comment about the repeating word waiver on our agenda today, but just being aware that we have the authority to change our policies and or adhere to them.
Thank you. So a motion to, were there any other comments or questions? Sorry. Okay. Motion to lay this over to the next HRA meeting, which would be
June 14th.
June 14th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is laid over to the June 14, 2023 HRA meeting. Item number 4, Resolution 23-338, amending the 2023 HRA Parking Enterprise Fund budget for Lawson Retail, located at 367 Wabasha Street, District 17, Ward 2.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. Commissioners, this item will amend the HRA budget for the Parking Enterprise Fund to authorize spending of up to $364,264 for the Lawson Retail to construct a kitchen ventilation system in the restaurant space at 367 Wabasha and pay a tenant broker fee to Port Consulting. This space was previously occupied by Dunn Brothers, which you may recall has been vacant since COVID.
Oh, yeah.
We have a letter of intent with an excellent prospective tenant for a 10-year lease, but we need to make upgrades in order to attract this and future tenants for that space. Again, the upgrades include a code-compliant kitchen ventilation system, a hood, exhaust fan, makeup air unit, and associated mechanical improvements. It is a more complicated project because it is in a parking ramp, but it will be a valuable investment. HRA staff have been working with HERO on the public bidding process. The compliance requirements will apply, vendor outreach, affirmative action, city labor standards, et cetera. So we're very excited about the possibility of re-tenanting this space, and with a tenant that, again, was brought to us by Port Consulting, and staff recommends approval of the item.
Comments or questions? Commissioner Naker.
Thanks, Chair Tolbert. Speaking in support of the item, Chair Tolbert and I actually just walked past that space about 10 minutes ago and saw people inside it for the first time in, I think, 3 years, which is really exciting. That's a linchpin corner of downtown St. Paul, and we've really missed having a vibrant center for gathering there. So I think that this investment in a kitchen for such a large space that really needs one is not just a good idea for this particular tenant, but to your point, Director Goodman, for future prospects in that site. So very much in support.
Great. Take that as a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted.
I'm going to take a motion from Commissioner Naker to recall item number 3. I think we need to vote on that.
No, we're
No.
just changing the date.
To recall, well, we have to recall it, though.
So moved.
All those in favor of recalling item number 3, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Can you read number 3 again?
Item number 3, Resolution 23-696, authorizing a loan of up to $100,000 from the HRA Business Assistance Fund and waiving certain Business Assistance Fund provisions to the Minnesota Museum of American Art, 350 Robert Street South, Suite 101, District 17, Ward 2.
My motion was to lay this over to June 14th. That should have been May 24th, which is the next meeting. So, motion to amend
I was
the,
like, where's the summer going?
that's what I was going to
It's
do.
really depressing. Thank you.
It's before school gets out. All those in favor of my amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
The resolution is laid over to the May 24th, 2023 HRA meeting. Item number 5, Resolution 23-697, authorization to designate Gloryville LLC, a Minnesota limited liability company, as tentative developer at 1570 White Bear Avenue, District 2, Ward 6.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. This item will approve the designation of Gloryville LLC, a Minnesota limited liability company owned and controlled by Gloria Wong, as tentative developer of the HRA-owned property at 1570 White Bear Avenue, which you might recall it was the Hafner site, is what we've referred to it in the past. This status would be until June of 2025 in order to finalize financing, construction costs, and approvals needed to redevelop the site. This site is 2.18 acres, currently vacant. Once was 3 separate land parcels that held a gas station, a commercial building, and the Hafner's Bowling and Event Center. In October, the HRA released an RFP for the site, received 5 proposals. In December, an evaluation team carefully reviewed each proposal, selected a couple of finalists to interview, and ultimately determined that Gloryville's proposal was the best aligned with the review criteria and the redevelopment vision of the HRA. The proposed development will include approximately 87 affordable housing units, 9 studios, 9 one-bedroom, 45 two-bedroom, and 24 three-bedroom units, with approximately 25,000 square feet of commercial space, which is a grocery store actually, and 92 surface and 63 underground parking spaces. The projected rents and income restrictions are proposed to be affordable, 25% or 22 units at 30% of AMI, 52% or 45 units at 50% of AMI, and 23% or 20 units at 60% of AMI. Final design and number of housing units may depend on neighborhood input and financing requirements. The proposal also includes a community room, space for food trucks, outdoor gathering space, and gardens. Gloria Wong is here with us today, along with Principal Project Manager Dan Bears. I'll say that Councilmember Yang's not here, but I know she's in support and was really, it was important to her that the developer, and to all of us, was very, very thoughtful about community needs and input with this project. So staff recommends approval of the item.
Comments, Commissioner Brenman?
I will make a motion to approve. I do want to also say that I'm excited about this project, and one of the things that I'm noticing as a trend is sort of what is old is new, and we're going back to the more pedestrian and street level friendly approach to grocery store amenities that are in the walking neighborhood and that will serve the building. I think that we went away from that with the mega mall plans, the malls, and killed our downtown retail, and I'm really excited to see them coming back as part of our housing projects. And it's showing up again and again. We saw that in Hams, we saw that here, we're seeing it repeatedly, and it's exciting.
Commissioner Prince?
I just want to congratulate PED and everyone who's worked on this, as well as our new developer. This is such a breakthrough for the east side that, like the Ham site in my ward, the Hafner site has been available for way too long. And it's just so great that PED, under Ms. Goodman's leadership, decided to put out a request for proposals and came up with one that is just fabulous for this site. So good work and good news for the east side.
Great. All right, we have a motion to approve. Anyone else? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 6, Resolution 23-698, authorizing a partial waiver of the Sustainable Building Ordinance for projects at 810 Atlantic Street, 560 Brunson Street, 729 Burr Street, 1129 Bush Avenue, 695 Cook Avenue East, 186 Front Avenue, 231 Front Avenue, 6 George Street West, and 930 York Avenue, Districts 3, 4, 5, and 6, Wards 1, 2, and 6.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. In August of 2022, HRA staff released the 7th Inspiring Communities RFP, making 12 properties available for redevelopment. We did receive proposals to redevelop 11 of those 12 properties, which would result in 19 total units of housing. Due to the level of subsidy requested, 9 of the 11 project sites will be required to meet the requirements of the Chapter 81 of the St. Paul Administrative Code, or the Sustainable Building Ordinance. The ordinance does exempt renovation of under 10,000 square feet and new construction projects receiving $200,000 or less in city funding. Up until now, the vast majority of inspiring community projects completed and contemplated have been exempt because that number was high enough. Just due to significant increases in construction costs over the past couple of years, inflation and rising mortgage interest rates, the subsidy requests now have risen and are reaching above that 200,000. So as a result, we're requesting partial waiver of the requirements in order to contain costs and streamline the requirements for developers and general contractors for these projects. So again, and previously the ordinance had exempted these types of projects. It's just that the costs and interest rates have now pushed the subsidy requirements to get these done beyond that exemption. So it may be that we need to examine that exemption going forward, the blanket exemption, to speak to Council President Brenmoen's suggestions, but today we're here to try to move these forward with an exemption on these projects.
So what would they have had to do without the exemption?
There's a whole list of requirements, green community standards, energy standards, water use standards. It's just all the things that are in the Sustainable Building Ordinance. Project Manager Sarah Zorn is here, as well as I believe Housing Director Tara Beard, if you need more details.
So are we waiving these consistently? Because they have other waivers for other city requirements too?
Chair Tolbert, I didn't hear your question.
Are we waiving these consistently for other projects like this?
Well, I'm going to let Housing Director Tara Beard jump up here.
Thanks, Director Goodman. Chair Tolbert, we are well aware that the Sustainable Building Ordinance, which I believe is over 10 years old, is due for an update. And I've been speaking directly with Kurt Schultz, who works heavily on sustainable issues, and will be addressing updates to the Sustainable Building Ordinance in the next couple years to address this very issue, which, as Director Goodman outlined, is essentially that an exclusion should have been designed around the scale of the house, not a price point, but it was around a price point, and we've sort of exceeded that. But to your question, Mr. Chair, they are still subject to green building standards. They're still subject to the Minnesota overlay of enterprise green criteria. And so what this does is allows some additional certification and basically paperwork and that requires fees for the developer to essentially get the same level of green and sustainable construction in the property. So I don't have any concerns about the sustainability of the actual properties being impacted or being less than it would be without this waiver. It really just is a cost containment mechanism for these 1 to 4 unit projects.
What would the cost have been? What additional cost would one of these projects have had without the exemption?
Chair Tolbert, that's a question I can't answer. I don't know if we know that exact number. About $5,000 to $10,000. About $5,000 to $10,000. I will get back to you with an exact number on that, Chair Tolbert. That's what Principal Project Manager Sarah Zorn is saying. It's roughly $5,000 to $10,000. But again, I want to reassure you that the actual standards are not any less. So there isn't something that the Sustainable Building Ordinance would require in the construction of the home that doesn't have to be met to that standard under the Minnesota overlay guidelines. It's just that they don't have to go through that extra certification process.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe we can have at one of the next meetings have Kurt Schultz or someone come explain this, because, I mean, one of these houses, I mean, it's, construction's got to be a couple $100,000 minimum.
Right.
So $5,000 to $10,000, it's, I mean, it's a small part of the project, I would imagine.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, excuse me, Chair Tolbert, absolutely, I think our developers, especially our Inspiring Communities developers, over half of which are emerging developers, you know, we're hearing like every dollar counts. And we're trying so hard to stretch the Inspiring Communities budget to cover all of the 11 projects. So there are, you know, serious cost containment issues that we're trying to address in all regards.
Okay.
May I invite Sarah to share?
Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. I just want to add, too, that many of these projects are being funded in part by Community Housing Impact Fund dollars through Minnesota Housing, which has their own sort of green sustainability path. And what they require is that developers build to enterprise green communities criteria, but they don't require the certification. And the certification process is what really takes a lot of time. It might be a little bit of money, but it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of time on the part of the developer. And so what we had hoped to do by picking these specific waivers was to decrease the amount of time, make the compliance piece with enterprise green communities smoother, rather than doing sort of two parallel tracks with Minnesota Housing's requirements and the City of St. Paul's requirements. So we're trying to hold everyone to the same standard regardless of the funding source. So this was part of what we were hoping to do. And they do require certification through Energy Star for new homes. I probably have that wrong. It's certified, Energy Star certified new homes criteria. They have to have that certification. It's just they don't have the Enterprise Green Communities certification. So that's the only piece that's really coming out of this.
Commissioner Bremer?
And I've certainly heard that in other construction conversations, just that the work is important and is being done, but the actual certification is cumbersome and expensive. I can't remember the name of the kind of the way things are headed, but recognizing also that a certification for it as at kind of a date stamp for what is required today, and like kind of having more of a living, evolving certification is maybe beneficial. I mean, I'm supportive today of this waiver, but I do think that if that's what's in front of us, then we should really take a look at our requirements, because waiving them on a case-by-case basis is not a good policy.
Any other comments or questions? All right, if not, motion to approve from Commissioner Ballinger. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 7, Resolution 23-700, authorizing the issuance and sale of conduit multifamily housing revenue bonds for the Balsam on Broadway project located at 540 Broadway Street, adopting a housing program, approving a waiver of the HRA maximum developer fee guidelines, and authorizing the execution of related documents. District 4, Ward 2.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert. Commissioners, this item will authorize final approval of the issuance of conduit multifamily housing revenue bonds not to exceed $33 million for the Balsam on Broadway project. The project includes the acquisition, demolition, and construction of a building with approximately 128 units of multifamily rental housing, covered and surface parking stalls, a bicycle room, dog wash, children's playroom, exercise room, office, and community space. 39 of the units will be restricted to households with incomes at 80% of area median income. 63 units will be restricted to households at 60% of AMI, and 26 units will be restricted to households at 30% of AMI or below with supportive services. The total development cost is estimated to be $70 million. Other funding sources include a deed cleanup grant, 4% tax credits attached to the bonds, as well as private funding. As a reminder, this is a conduit bond issue. The bond shall not constitute an indebtedness, liability, general or moral obligation, or pledge of faith or credit or taxing power of the HRA, City of St. Paul, or any agency or political subdivision thereof, Principal and interest on the bonds are payable solely from the revenues and other sources pledged to the payment, and as described in the bond documents. Representatives from the development team are here today, as well as Principal Project Manager Dan Bayers, and staff recommends approval of the item.
Commissioner Brenmo.
I saw that look. I would be interested in understanding a little bit more about the waiver, approving waiving the maximum developer fee. We were just haggling over $5,000. This guideline would waive from what would be the maximum of $6.4 million up to $9.18 million, or $27 million waiver. So what costs so much? Why do we need to do this?
Council President Berman, I would invite the development team or the Principal Project Manager. I believe this has to do with the calculation of the financing. Actually, even the, not sure who's best to answer that question, but we've got people here to answer it.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the question, council members, commissioners, excuse me. My name is Willie Boulay. I'm a vice president with the developer LS Black Development. It is, the reason for the waiver request is a little bit of a long story, so give me a couple of sentences here, but.
It's a lot of money, so I'll be patient.
Thank you. The project was started almost 3 years ago now when it was contemplated, and as you know, the changes that we've experienced in the market have been drastic, both from an interest rate perspective and a construction cost perspective. I would say since we've started the project, the construction cost on a $70 million project has probably risen over 20% total, and the increases in interest rates in that time have decreased the amount of loan that we can borrow on the project's revenues by several $million. So in working with city staff, especially over the last 18 months, there are most projects that are getting closed and moving forward now and producing this housing receive a significant amount of subsidy, direct subsidy from the city or from other sources. Could give many examples of that. And we worked through the process with Dan and the city over the course of several funding rounds for various sources. And ultimately it was decided that very late last year that those funds would go elsewhere. We still have a commitment to this project and want to reduce the subsidy ask as much as we possibly can and still move the project forward and produce income and housing at all levels of affordability, which includes deep affordability and 5 homeless units with a partnership of Simpson Housing. And so the way we were able to do that was many different strategies and many different levers that we were able to pull, additional risk we were able to take, borrowing against our future cash flow in partnership with Greater Minnesota Housing Fund. And one of the other strategies that we used was this waiver. What it does is allows us to charge slightly more developer fee, and in exchange that brings additional tax credit equity into the project. So our investor, US Bank, contributes about $1 million more to the project. Without this project will not move forward. And what it does is allows them to make an investment and have enough cushion for things that could go poorly during the project to absorb that cost. So without this waiver, this project and this housing will not get built. Thank you.
And I appreciate that in-depth and thorough explanation. I feel like when we're making a waiver that's that significant, it's good to truly understand what's going on. And the project is exciting with, 3-bedroom, 30% AMI, 2-bedroom, 30% AMI, as well as efficiencies on 1-bedroom. But I think that we see a lot of projects where it's like, oh, we'll put all the affordable units 1-bedroom and efficiency. So I really appreciate the way that it's spaced out. And also the doggedness, which you've come after this project and stayed with it. So I do appreciate the explanation about the increased developer fee. And, it doesn't dampen my enthusiasm for the overall project, but I do think the public deserves to understand why we're waiving that amount and increasing the developer fee so significantly.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, it was a financial mechanism to increase another private source of funds that comes in through a federal resource. And we do really appreciate the city's understanding. We understand, as with all projects, that your resources are limited, and we're proud to produce this housing with a limited direct subsidy into the project, and I think it's outside of the box thinking that allowed another private source to come through, and that's not often heard, so we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Chair Tolbert, Council President Bowman, I'll just add that the team really was very creative in trying to figure out how to get 30% AMI units in this way. They're doing income averaging, and so we're thrilled for that, and also just the location very close to downtown, and some development momentum that this project will create in that area. So it's a good project.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for those questions, Commissioner Brennan. I think that explanation is really helpful. So, this is in your way.
Yes.
Commissioner Naker.
Thanks, Chair Tolbert. I spoke about my support for this project when we saw it last time, and I also appreciate the explanation. It seems to me that this was a way to increase the private investment in the project and not increase any of the public investment, which, although that ends up increasing the developer fee, in my mind, that's a win-win given the product that you're delivering to us. So, but it is a really important question because it's a significant amount of money. So thank you for your creativity, and I look forward to supporting this.
Take that as a motion to approve. All those in favor say
Aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes.
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 8, Resolution Public Hearing 23-115, giving preliminary approval to the proposed issuance of conduit multifamily housing revenue bonds for the Sibley Court Apartments located at 484 Temperance Street and Sibley Park Apartments located at 211 7th Street East under Minnesota statutes, Chapter 462C, and adopting a housing program, District 17, Ward 2.
Director Goodman.
Thank you, Chair Tolbert, Commissioners. This item actually will sound probably familiar to you as you've considered funding on this project before, but with a different nonprofit developer. This developer has been established for much longer. So I'll go through these details, but it'll sound familiar, so I wanted to flag that for you. This item will authorize preliminary approval for the HRA to issue up to $45 million in conduit multifamily housing revenue bonds for the benefit of Affordable Housing Alliance, doing business as Integrity Housing, to assist in the financing of the acquisition and rehabilitation of 2 existing rental facilities known as Sibley Court and Sibley Park. Sibley Court is located at 484 Temperance. It's a 5-story, 122-unit building that opened in 2003. Sibley Park at 211 7th Street East is a 5-story, 114-unit building opened in 2002. The buildings were constructed through HRA action, primarily utilizing low-income housing tax credits and tax increment financing. This nonprofit, Integrity Housing, has submitted an application requesting these conduit multifamily housing revenue bonds to finance acquisition and rehabilitation of the 2 buildings. They do have a purchase agreement to acquire the 2 properties and will complete over $2.5 million in capital improvements, including upgrading interiors, amenities, and lighting, refreshing the exterior of each building. Closing is anticipated for early June. Improvements will be completed over time. This is a nonprofit that was launched in 2010 with a mission-driven approach toward creation of mixed-income affordable housing through new development and the acquisition of existing multifamily properties. They are located in California, but they're developing projects in multiple states. Currently, all 236 units are income restricted, with 20% restricted at 50% of AMI, as required by the TIF financing, 43% restricted to households at 60% of AMI, as required by the LIHTC financing, and 37% restricted to the households at or below 115% of AMI, as required by the TIF financing. Additionally, the project includes 49 Section 8 project-based vouchers, 25 in Sibley Court, and 24 in Sibley Park. When Integrity acquires the project, they'll proceed to restrict all the units to 60% of AMI or below, with 20% at or below 50%, so the units qualify for the 4D, such that the units qualify for the 4D tax classification. They will maintain income and rent restrictions for a 30-year period from closing date. As a reminder, this is a conduit bond issue. The bonds do not constitute indebtedness, liability, general moral obligation, or pledge of faith or credit, or taxing power of the HRA, the City of St. Paul, or any agency or political subdivision thereof. The final approval by the HRA Board and consent of City Council for the HRA to issue the bonds is anticipated for meetings on May 24th. Representatives from the development team are here, as well as Bond Council, and staff recommends approval of the item.
Comments or questions? Oh, actually, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here to testify in the matter? Doesn't look like it. We'll have a motion to close the public hearing and approve from Commissioner Naker. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes.
6 in favor, none opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted.
That brings us to the end. Anything else, Director Goodman?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned.